Contaminated drinking water kills countless children every day. You can help stop death. Visit lifetoday.org/water4life to give clean drinking water today.
I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You're the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I am Randy Robinson, and you know, I do love a good story, and there's nothing, fact is better than fiction, and you're going to hear a story today that is one of those is just very interesting, but it's also very, very beautiful and very wonderful, and I hope no matter where you're at, that something in my guest's story will resonate with you. My guest is Ashlee Leppert. And back in 2017, August of 2017, Hurricane Harvey hit the coast of Texas, devastated Houston, caused lots of destruction right up there with Katrina and everybody knows about. And Ashlee was called in as part of the Coast Guard to do rescue missions. And that's where things get a little hairy. We'll talk about that. She was recognized actually the next year at President Trump's State of the Union address, and so you might remember her from that. But there's a lot more to her story than just flying helicopters, and she tells it in a new memoir called The Hurricane Within. It's available now where you get books. You can get the full detail, but we're going to walk you through a little bit of her story today, so we're excited that you're here. And by the way, if you know anyone that's military or aviation, that kind of thing, this will resonate, I think, with them. They'll at least find it interesting. Ashlee, welcome to Life Today Live. Great to have you on the program today.
Hey, Randy. Thank you so much for having me. This is an awesome opportunity, and I'm so excited to speak to all the listeners today.
Before we get to the hurricane, both within and without, how did you grow up and how did you get into this?
Awesome question. I'd love to share a little bit about my history. I grew up right outside of Detroit, Michigan. So I'm, diehard Lions and Tigers fan. So some days it's a good feeling, other days not so much. But I always knew that I wanted to go forth and do something big in my life. I loved sports growing up. Academics was not really my jam, but I really thrived in that team dynamic in sports. So right out of high school, I had quite a few significant things happen to me, both positive and negative, but there was a real draw for me to want to be a part of a bigger mission, and that was in the military. And unfortunately, I had one of my very good friends, Nash Collins, pass away in a boating accident when I was 19. And he was airlifted by a helicopter to a hospital. And there was a combination of just that experience. He ultimately passed away, but I just had such an admiration for these first responders that were there on scene and were able to get him to a hospital. And I also had a really good friend named Chris Wollner, who sort of gave me the encouragement to join the Coast Guard as he was already active duty. And he would call me up and he'd be like, I'm flying around and I'm saving lives and doing all these cool missions. I mean, right? When you hear that, it kind of makes you want to be a part of that and join. So in 2005, I found myself signing the dotted line to join the Coast Guard, and I went to boot camp, and soon after was in Coast Guard aviation school. And as you had mentioned, women in the military still at this point in time, we were very few and far between, particularly in the aviation sector. So the first 5 years of my aviation career, I was pretty much the only female flight mechanic there. Wow. So that was quite a dynamic time period, but I've always considered myself one of the guys, so I can hang and joke and do all the things. And they really brought me in as kind of a sister. So it was really cool. But my parents stayed in Detroit, Michigan. And so I was able to go back quite often and just really, really loved the mission, the changing environment of flying out and doing something different every single day.
So you started as a mechanic. How long did it take you to get behind what do you even call it? The sticks? How long until you were piloting?
So just to clarify, the Coast Guard's a bit unique in the fact that we fix the aircraft as well as fly on the aircraft.
Mm,
So my actual job title was an avionics electrical technician. So I was sort of in charge of all of the navigations, communication equipment, just keeping everything running properly. And then I was a hoist mechanic. So when we would be called out on missions, I would sort of put on my flight suit and be
okay.
there as sort of the um, I was kind of the middleman between the pilots flying and me lowering down the rescue swimmer in the basket. So I'm
Uh,
hanging out of the helicopter doing kind of everything, keeping the pilots, in a hover so that goes smoothly. So you have to definitely keep your head on a swivel.
no doubt. Oh, I mean, that's not everybody can do that. I could not do that. I don't like flying, so I definitely couldn't do that. So I mean that takes some metal. I'm curious about your personal background. What was your family like? What was the environment? Was there any spiritual component to it?
So I grew up in a middle class home. Both my mother and father were amazing parents. I had one older sister, Sarah. A pretty typical household. There wasn't a whole lot of spiritual components at that time frame simply because my dad worked 6 to 7 days a week. He
Mm,
was a very good provider for our home, and my mother didn't drive. She just never attained a driver's license. So most often, if we did go somewhere, we were walking, and that just wasn't really something the typical Sunday church service. My mom was very particular in sharing about God and always saying our prayers and things like
mm,
that. But the typical church environment just was really non existent. So they also sort of struggled with their own trauma, which is why it's a very big part of my mission today is to share about trauma and to help other people heal.
yeah.
Because I witnessed both of my mother and father. They had unresolved trauma from their youth,
Mm,
and because of which they developed sort of a maladaptive coping mechanism of alcohol or other, prescription medications. So
mm,
even though they were amazing parents, it's very important for me to say that they very much struggled, and as a child, that was kind of hard to watch.
mm.
So I think again, that's a very big portion of why I do what I do today, so that way I can help other people unpack that trauma so they too don't go down a path of unhealed ways of dealing with life.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, that's tough, and I love that you honor your parents, even in their struggles, and that's what we should. For you, when you joined the Coast Guard, I mean, was God a thought, or did you just say your prayers nicely, or how? Just what sort of? Because your relationship now with God is deep, and from what I've seen, just continues to grow and flourish. I'm curious where it was when you're entering the service there.
So I think a lot of listeners might resonate this, but my faith journey was one of a lot of highs and a lot of lows. I ran full throttle to God, and then I
Mm,
also ran away from Him, sort of like the prodigal child at some
mm,
point. So for me, right at 19, my friend Nash, as I spoke about, he died in that helicopter, or excuse me, in that boat accident. And that really prompted me with a lot of deep questions in regards to faith,
right.
heaven and hell, and where did my friend go?
Mm,
And it was in that search for truth and meaning when I found myself finding the feet of Jesus. And
mm,
that's where I encourage everybody in their personal faith journey. If you seek the truth, you end up at Jesus. And so I had a friend that worked at a restaurant with me when I was 19, and she was sort of the church goer, and I hate to say it, but we all kind of looked at her as like the goody two shoes. She
sure.
knew all the answers,
I get it. Yeah.
but she answered those questions when I had tough faith questions.
Mm,
She gave me the time and the answers, and we would sit in that booth at the restaurant and just go through the Bible study and answer questions. And it came to a point where she said, "Are you ready to accept Jesus into your life?" And boy, did I jump up and I said, yes, I am. It was something that just felt right. It just completed my being. But again, as I said earlier, there was a lot of highs and a lot of lows in my faith journey. And so being that I dealt with some things watching my parents struggle, and I was unfortunately a victim. Well, not a victim. I don't like to use that, a survivor now, but I was also assaulted at 19. So that made me kind of question things and run away from my faith. But ultimately, through those highs and lows, I'm now in a position where I can say God was with me through it all, and He is now giving me purpose through that pain.
Yeah. All right. You know, and the thing about it is, that's the story of so many people. This, you know, the kind of back and forth, the pain, the questions, and it's life, right? But I love that you go back, you even, because you take your complaints, your questions, your pain, your raw emotions to God. He doesn't flinch. He's not surprised. I don't even think he's disappointed. I think he's glad you come to him like a child comes to a parent when they're in pain. So that, I think, is key for anyone who may be struggling and listening. It's okay. The struggle's real. We get it. We're not here to deny it. We're not here to shame you. We're here to say, like Ashlee did, you take it to God's feet. Take me to Hurricane Harvey.
Wow. Yeah, this is so much to unpack. But that's exactly why I wrote my book, The Hurricane Within, to sort of really go into detail about that. But you hit the nail on the head, Randy, when you spoke about God wants us all. He wants our anger and our emotion because he loves us regardless. He says, bring to me all of your broken pieces and I will help you put that together. And so as we talk about Hurricane Harvey, I was still on those struggles of, finding my faith and really growing close to God. But in a beautiful God way, he met me right literally in the middle of that hurricane. So 2017, I'm stationed in New Orleans, Louisiana. And in Coast Guard Aviation, we train. We spend so many flight hours training and perfecting our skill sets. So when something like a natural disaster, such as Hurricane Harvey, happens, we can go out and complete the mission seamlessly. So there I was that Saturday right before the hurricane hit. I got a call in the middle of the night stating that I was going to be sent out to be one of the very first helicopters on scene. And I think myself and my crew, we were all very under the impression that we really didn't know what to expect, right? Because we didn't know how devastating this really was going to be. But sure enough, as we were flying on scene, we stopped in Beaumont, Texas. And in that moment, with the amount of torrential downpour and the wind, we just knew, without really saying a whole lot, but we knew this was going to be big. And from that moment forward, for 3 days straight, I was in the hurricane, literally in the middle of it, doing nonstop rescues, plucking people off of roofs, and saving pregnant women who were, about to give birth in their apartment complex, and children and babies. And it truly was a pivotal moment for me. And I speak to this in my book. But at one moment, I had a cabin full of people we just rescued. There was about 18 people in our tiny helicopter.
Wow.
And most of which were children. And as we were leaving our hover and flying to the convention center where we were dropping off these survivors, in a moment, I had looked out of my right side cabin sliding door. And in that moment, the clouds sort of parted and the visibility increased just enough for me to see this giant, huge cross, this white cross glaring back at me in the middle of this hurricane. And in that moment, I just felt God speaking to me that not in just that moment was he with me, but he was in every single previous hurricane and trial and hurtful moment that I've ever had in my life. He was with me, that he has never left or forsaken me. And this overwhelming peace came upon me, like God had me exactly in that moment doing exactly what he had destined for my life. With all my broken pieces and everything, he was with me. And we ended up completing the mission and saving dozens of lives.
And that's wild. I love it. What was the cross? Was it literally a cross, or was it the light? Do you know?
It was literally a physical cross.
Huh.
It was I can't remember the name of the actual church right now, but there is a beautiful church in the outskirts of Houston that has this couple 100-foot tall,
Oh,
huge beaming white cross. It's just wild how God works. I call them God winks.
yeah.
He shows himself to you in these ways and speaks to you in ways that you just know that is God.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know the story about the disciples in the boat and the storm hits and Jesus is like
Yes.
sleeping, and they're all freaking out like we're gonna die. That's me in turbulence. I can't even imagine being in a helicopter in a stinking hurricane. And to me, it has to be God. But I mean, do you okay in that, or do you just used to it? Because that just the physical aspect of it alone, I don't handle well. I'm guessing, I don't know. How do you get through that?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know to this day how I was able to get through it. I will take a moment and give a shout out to each one of my crews. I mean, the pilots, the rescue swimmers. I mean, they did this with me seamlessly, and we were just such a well-oiled machine. I was able to keep the pilots in a hover, keeping them away from trees and power lines, while at the same time I'm having all this gusts of wind and rain entering the cabin as I'm trying to bring up these people in the basket. I mean, you're right. Oftentimes I look back and I'm like, wow, how in the heck did we manage to do that?
Yeah.
But it just speaks to the skill set of the United States Coast Guard aviation community. It's just, we
Oh gosh.
train so much that we go out there and complete the mission. And I'm just honored to have been out there.
Yeah, I'm honored that it was you and not me. So kudos to that. All right, this is the book, "The Hurricane Within" by Ashlee Leppert, and running the rescue basket. I mean, that is seriously intense. Tell people a little bit about what you do now in helping our military veterans and people who have been through trauma.
I'd love to share about this because I want to inspire the listeners right now that you don't have to stay hurting, that there is hope and there is restoration. And I speak to that from my personal journey. I am an author and an inspirational speaker, but my most favorite job that I get to be a part of is SOF Missions. It is a nonprofit dedicated to ending veteran suicide and establishing that once lost resiliency and hope within our nation's warriors and first responders. So my part is the spiritual mentor. So these amazing heroes come down to Florida, which everything is paid for. We bring them in and we give them 4 pillars of rehabilitation to include psychological, physical, social, and spiritual. So usually in the dynamic of the job, whether it's military or first responder, I mean, we see trauma, right? And so we give them a safe place to not only unpack that, but to regain those tools on how to build that resiliency, to find their purpose outside of their military titles. And as you can tell, I'm just so passionate about it because SOF Missions is out there truly backing their mission statement and helping veterans and first responders.
I love it. You know, what's interesting is that you guys, wherever you're serving, you do things that most people would not be able to do. In other words, the courage that it takes, the trust that it takes, in your crew and in your unit, wherever you're at, and yet it seems like sometimes it's really hard for veterans who are suffering silently oftentimes to reach out and get that help. Why do you think that's a sticking point for some people?
Well, I will speak to my story. For me, a lot of times people would say, "Wow, you're so brave. You flew in helicopters and you did this and you did that." But quite frankly, what I think the bravest thing that I have done is to actually say, "Hey, I need help."
Mm-hmm.
And it is so ingrained in the military mindset of complete the mission, go, 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 get it done, sacrifice for the greater good, which are all great concepts. But at the end of the day, we cannot operate as human beings to be the best version of ourselves for our loved ones, for our family and our friends, if we don't take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important that the listeners understand that it's not selfish. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not any of those things to reach out and say, "Hey, I need help." Because if you're bleeding out, if you're not 100%, you are not going to be able to take care of the people in your life who depend on you. So that is my call to action to anybody who's listening,
Yeah.
is that God wants you to be healed. He wants you to be restored. He wants you to be connected with those people in your life that you're meant to be connected with. And you can't do that if you're broken and isolated.
Yeah, this is the website. It's sofmissions.org, sofmissions.org. And if you're in that position, please do reach out. I mean, guys like me, we see you in airports or whatever, and we say, thank you for your service, and we mean it, and we do. But take care of yourself, please. I can't do that for you. So reach out. Ashlee, people just like her are waiting on the other end to offer you hope, and look, I can't relate to everything, but these people can relate to you. And this I do know. God can relate to you. God can heal you. God can clarify your mind, your thoughts, give you a new purpose like Ashlee has to help others, which is just a shift, going from helping people in helicopters to helping people at the SOF missions. There is always hope, and God always has a purpose. So please do. I mean, that from the bottom of my heart, and I know Ashlee's too. And Ashlee, I love the work you do, and I appreciate again your service. Not just to the United States, but to God's kingdom. It's a beautiful thing. I don't know. How would you want to leave people with just one thought? If there's anything someone takes away, and you hit it pretty good just now, to those. But I don't know, for the rest of us, maybe. What's your message?
My message, Randy, would be that you are destined to do great things. I don't know who's hearing this right now, who is dealing with a battle in their mind, a battle in their spirit. Maybe there was something said to you, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not meant to do great things. I don't know what you've seen in your wartime, in your first responder roles as a law enforcement officer. I don't know your story. But just as Randy said, God knows your story. And he says, "Come to me, those who are heavy laden, who are needing rest, and he will give it to you." And I don't say this from a religious, legalistic way. I say this from, I've been there. I don't know everything in the Bible. I don't know everything about God, but what I do know is God healed me because I brought him my broken mess. And he says, "Thank you. Now I can do my job and heal you." So I don't know who needs to hear that, but you are loved. You are destined to do great things. God says you have a purpose and you have a plan for your life. So I hope that you reach out to SOF Missions, you reach out to me through ashleeleppert.com any way, but most importantly, reach out to God because he loves you and he's there for you.
We all need to hear that because we all need rescue. And that's the thing, from a spiritual standpoint, we're all stuck in a storm and we need rescue. And that's what God wants to do so badly. So yes, I echo what Ashlee said. I want to show you her website. If you want to connect with her, you might want to bring her in to speak at an event that you have or your church, just to reach those who will hear her in a different way that they may not hear the rest of us. It is ashleeleppert.com. It looks just like this. And if you're listening, I'll go ahead and spell that. It's ASHLEE, and Leppert is LEPPERT.com for those of you on the audio portion. Ashlee, again, thank you. I love what God's doing in your life. Are you I'm guessing that you're building even more stories as people respond to hearing your message. You seeing a little bit of impact out there when you speak?
Oh man, I sure am. And I am literally living proof that God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And so I'm working on my second book, which is set to be released this fall.
Nice.
And I'm just honored that people care about my life, quite frankly. And I'm happy to share it and hopefully resonate with just one person out there.
Well, I think they care about you because it's clear you care about them. And that's a reflection of God's heart who cares about us all. So thank you again. Appreciate you so much.
My honor. Thank you so much.
Appreciate all you guys out there watching. If you know someone needs to hear this, hit that share button. Just say, I think this will inspire you or at least be interesting. If you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed to Life Today TV, I would invite you to do that. And we'll see you again next time. The Hurricane Within is wherever you get books.